sing together.
When the music fades and all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's a word that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. Come on, we sing. And I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I made it, and it's all about you. When it's all about you, Jesus. Oh, it's all about you, yeah.
King of endless worth, sing with us. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. And though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart.
And I'm coming back to the heart of worship. It is all about you. Oh, it's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it. When it's all about you, oh, it's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. Oh, it's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it, and it's all about you. Oh, it's all about you, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. Amen.
Hello there, I'm Diane Louise Jordan and welcome to the Heart of Worship Online, an extended version of a new monthly feature on my BBC Radio 2 programme, The Sunday Hour, where I get the opportunity to interview a composer or a writer of sacred music to find out how they put together a piece of music especially for worship. And my first guest of the series is singer, songwriter and worship leader Matt Redman, whose song The Heart of Worship inspired the title of this feature. Matt, it's just great to have you on the show.
Thank you, it's great.
So, Heart of Worship, what's that song all about?
I guess it's really about focusing in on what it means to worship, what it's all about, what's the purpose of this. And ultimately, when I wrote the song, it was to say, let's strip it all back. We've got all this music going on, you know, we've got all these attempts at songwriting and style, but what it's all about, and it's really just lifting your eyes up towards God.
I mean, now that song is known internationally. It really touches the core of people. When we sing that song, you really feel as if you are actually worshipping. But if you can just take me right back to the beginning, the real roots, and really describe what happened.
Yeah, it was an interesting song because it was actually written as a very personal thing for me, and I didn't realise it could be something that was congregational. I was at a church in Watford called Soul Survivor Watford, it's part of the Anglican Church, and we had this crazy little season where the pastor, a guy called Mike Pilavacci, he said, right, you know, we love to worship through song, but I think we should refocus a bit and make sure that we're not leaning on all the props like the sound system and, you know, who's leading worship and what songs. He said, so we're going to get in a room with just our voices and our Bibles, strip it all away and check that we can still bring an offering to God. And, you know, this church was full of teenagers and young 20s, and it was a really kind of bold thing to do. But to be honest, the first week it was a little bit awkward. It was like, and I was thinking, like, what's my job? You know, I used to be the music leader here. I have nothing to do now. But that actually made me ask some questions, you know. What are my motives when I do this? When I'm up there on a stage, you know, am I doing this as service or am I trying to build my own little thing? You know, and it was a great moment for me as a musician and as a worshipper to refocus. And so I wrote this little song describing what happened. It says, when the music fades, all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's of worth, that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song. And then the chorus says, I'm coming back to the heart of worship. Like I said, when I first wrote it, I thought that was my little thing, but then figured out actually those words seem to relate to other people.
When you started out as a young lad, did you know that you were going to be a singer-songwriter? And
no.
How did it happen then?
Well, I can't even read music, and I always like messing around with words. But it was my youth leader. He heard me singing and encouraged me in that. I was in a great church which encouraged young people to use gifts, and you know, started travelling around the country at weekends to different churches from about the age of 15, 16. And then this whole Soul Survivor movement took off, which was thousands of, and then tens of thousands of young people, and it just was a great moment to learn, you know. It kind of stretched you. You had to write songs to give them something to sing, and you had to kind of up your game music-wise. So it was great. It was a great learning environment.
So how did you write your songs, particularly, as you say, you don't write or read music?
Yeah, I mean, it's instinct to me, really, and, you know, now and again I have to surround myself with some musicians who know what they're doing, but just my approach has always been just to try and pour my heart out and try and let my mind guide it, you know, and I want the songs to be passionate but also purposeful. So I think sometimes songs can just be this stream of overflow and it's kind of unconscious, and can be a beauty to that music. I like a lot of music like that, but when you're writing congregational worship songs, it can't be like that. You have to be very focused. You have to think, because you're putting words into people's mouths.
I was actually going to ask you about that, the difference between writing a song because it just flows out of you, and writing a song that you know people of all tastes and ages will be singing, hopefully every Sunday in their local church.
Yeah.
So what do you focus on? Do you focus on scripture, that congregation? What do you do?
Well, I mean, firstly, it has to be real to me. Secondly, I do want it to reflect God well. You know, I'd like someone to sing one of my songs and think, oh yeah, that's describing the God that we read about in the Bible. You know, that would mean a lot to me. But also, it has to connect with people's lives. You know, I remember something Bono from U2 once said about songwriting. He said, you can have 1,000 ideas, but without emotion, it's just an essay. So I don't want my songs just to be the cerebral exercise. I want them to be something that people can connect with and pour their hearts into, and more than that, even that, oh yeah, this is relevant to my life. I've been going through this thing this week, and this song speaks into that. This song's a great prayer for me right now because I'm walking through this storm of life, whatever it might be. You know, I want the songs, the ones that have taken off the most, they've always been the ones that seem to connect with people's real lives.
Worship is so important because it's important to God. Because it's really, really important to God. God makes a big deal about worship. In fact, the most prominent theme in the Old Testament was the theme of worship. It was the theme of worship and idolatry. because the Lord said, you know, either you worship me or you'll find something else to worship. The battle for Israel was never whether they would worship. They were always going to worship because every human being worships. The battle for Israel was who or what will we worship? That was always Israel's battle. And if they'd stopped worshiping the Lord their God, they found something else to worship. And that's what human beings have been doing ever since. You see, for God, it's a huge thing. We were created for his praise. We were created to worship him. In fact, the Lord said to Moses at the burning bush, go and tell Pharaoh this message, set my people free. Not simply that they would be free, but set my people free so that they might worship me. Set my people free for a purpose, and the purpose is that they might worship. If you look at the Old Testament, God seemed to take a huge amount of interest in his house, which was a house of worship. First the tabernacle and then the temple. If you've read any of Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, any of that, you know that, God was very, very particular about how he should be worshipped. You know, he was saying in the altar, well, if you're going to worship me, you need to wear this. If you worship me, you need to do it in this order. If you worship me, you need to build it to look like that. He was very particular. And then when Jesus came, they asked Jesus at one point, of all the commandments in the Old Testament, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, the greatest commandment of all of them is this, and this is the summary of the law, that you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then he said, the second commandment is like the first one. It means it completes the first one, is that you love your neighbor as yourself. But the great commandment is that we love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, with all that we have and with all that we are. We love him completely. And you see that again and again and again. And when I first became a Christian, my honest question was, why? Why, Lord? What? Do you have some sort of inferiority complex? Are you insecure that you need us to say nice things to you all the time? You know, why is it? Are you not sure about who you are, that you need us to praise you and to thank you and to make you feel better about yourself? I couldn't understand it. And I imagined it was like the Lord saying, come my people, praise me, thank me, hallelujah me, tell me how wonderful I am. I was like, I don't get it. And the reason I didn't get it is because I completely misunderstood what worship was about. I completely misunderstood what we were doing, because worship isn't about buttering God up. You know, it's not about making him feel, God feels really good about himself. He felt really good about himself before he had us to worship him. God does not have an insecurity problem. He's never in heaven, you know, saying to himself, oh my goodness, I'm not sure about my godness. Oh, I need some people to make me feel better. There's none of that. There's none of that. God has no doubts about himself. That's not what worship is. Worship is the overflow of love, and worship is the expression of love. And God calls us to love him, and that's expressed amongst all sorts of other ways in words. It's expressed in the things that we say. And you know, love that's not expressed is a painful love. You know, if you love someone and you never say it, gosh, that's hard. Love that is expressed is love that is completed. Now, I've said this, used this illustration loads of times. Some of you have heard it before, but I'll just one more for those that haven't, because I can't think of a better one. One of my good friends is Tim Hughes, who wrote songs like Here I Am to Worship, and who now leads Gas Street Church up in Birmingham. And I've known Tim since he was 11 years old. And he was actually a worship pastor at this church years ago. And I remember after Tim got married, literally he and Rachel just came back from their honeymoon. And it was very soon after that the three of us went to Australia to minister at a camp. And it was near Melbourne, it was just outside Melbourne. And it was in the country and it was far from anywhere. And we were put in this hut. And there was these like 2 rooms next to each other. And the dividing wall was very, very thin. And there was no background noise. And there was no TV, no radio, no internet, no nothing. And they just come back from their honeymoon. And it is amazing what you can hear late at night through a thin wall, especially when you've got a glass up against the wall. And I just want to tell you what I heard late at night. Now, I ask you to keep this confidential because this needs to stay between us because otherwise it's not fair. And it went something like this. Oh, Rachel, Rachel, I love your backing vocals. You have a voice like an angel. Oh, Timmy, Timmy, when you play your guitar and you get all passionate, it sends a shiver down my spine. Oh, Rachel, Rachel, when you flick your hair and it shimmers in the moonlight. Oh, Rachel. Oh, Timmy, Timmy, when you start singing and your little dimples go in, I just want to kiss your dimples. Oh, Timmy. Oh, Rachel. And he just went on and on and on. After a while, I wanted to kill myself. I thought, if that's what happens when you get married, praise God, I'm single. You know? But what were they doing? What were they doing? They were praising each other. They were thanking each other. They were adoring each other. And no one would think there was anything wrong with that. That's what you're meant to do. That's what you're meant to do. And that's the essence of what worship is. Worship is a relationship. It's not a performance. Worship is an expression of a relationship. Worship is about intimacy. Worship more than anything is about coming close. And the ultimate place you want to get to in worship is that place of intimacy. Even, I've seen it with some couples when they've been in love for a long time. And it's lasted. And they're there. And do you know what? I sometimes just can tell. Do you ever, when you go to a coffee shop or a restaurant, do you ever look around and people watch? And you try not to let them know that you're watching them, but you are. Well, I am watching them. And there's sometimes older couples that come and sit down and like they don't talk at all through the whole meal. They're there. And it's awkward. And you just want to go and help them. You want to go and sit with them and start, hey, how are you guys doing? And just like that. And you can feel it's awkward. But then there are other couples. And I don't know how you tell the difference, except you do. That they're just sitting together. And they're not saying anything. But you can just tell. They're just comfortable with each other. They just sit well. They don't need to say anything. They're just there. And they don't happen to be sitting in the same space. They're sitting together. And you know what? That's the ultimate in worship. That's adoration. That's when you come to the place of, oh my goodness, I just want to be with you, Lord. I just want to be with you. And all the rest is a doorway. The psalmist says, I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. You know, I'll enter in. And so often when we begin a worship time, we'll begin with thanksgiving. We'll give thanks to him for what he's done. We'll remind ourselves. That's biblical. That's what the people of Israel were told to do all the time. And then we'll praise him for who he is. Thanksgiving is for the things he's done, and praise is for who he is. And we'll say, you are like this. We declare, we praise you. This is who you are. We love your faithfulness. We love the fact that you're a God of power and mercy. We bless you for this, this, and this. But then it comes to a place of kneeling before the Lord, our Maker, and just being and adoring. And that's the place we want to get to. That's the place, because that's the place of just wow. And do you know the words for worship? Just going to get for a moment a little bit technical, then I'll just tell one story and we'll stop. Not technical. There's two main words for worship in the Bible. And in the Old Testament, the word in the Greek version of the Old Testament, as well as in the New Testament, which was written in Greek, in the Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Old Testament, the word is latreo, which in the Old Testament, the Hebrew original was the word that was also used to work. And for the Hebrews, for the Jewish people, for the Israelites, worship was part of the whole of life. So you worshipped as you toiled the fields. You worshipped as your relationships. And that's why there were so many regulations and rules about how you should live. And it all came under the banner of worship. Worship is everything we do. And in the New Testament, that word is literally, latreo, is to serve. And you can see it. It's used about 4 or 5 times in the New Testament. But the main word used for worship in the New Testament with the coming of Jesus is the Greek word proskuneo. And it comes 66 times in the New Testament. And do you know, this main word that is used for worship in the New Testament, its roots are, it kind of means to come towards, to kiss. And it was used in the secular world around. That word was used in the first century in the world outside the church to speak of a hound licking its master's hand. And do you know what? They took that word and they chose it as the main word for worship. Isn't that beautiful? It's like a hound licking its master's hand. I come towards you. I come to kiss you, but as it were from below. It has that reverence and awe and intimacy. Worship is a kissing thing. Worship is an intimate thing. Worship is a coming close thing. And the reason it's important is because he's worth it, he deserves it, but also because it's good for us. It's good for us. Worship is the best medicine. True worship. And do you see, it's so much more than singing. It involves singing, but it's so much more than singing. It's absolute medicine. When we worship, we get healed. Why? Because worship ushers in God's presence. I love the version of Psalm 22, verse 3. The Lord inhabits the praises of his people. And that's just such a great, the Lord lives in his people's praise. And we know that, don't we? So often when we worship, you know, it's like, oh my goodness, I sense your presence. So often the most powerful times of ministry, of seeing God at work that I've ever seen are in the context of worship, when we've worshipped and we've met with the Lord. Somehow it releases his power. Now, we don't worship to release his power. We worship because he's worth it. We worship because we love him, because it's the greatest commandment. But do you know what? Something happens. And I just know from the beginning, those of you that have been to Soul Survivor, we've had the joy over the years of seeing lots and lots of people come to Jesus. And we've had the joy over the years of seeing lots of people get healed in their hearts and in their bodies. And I'm absolutely convinced that the secret weapon, if you like, is that we spend a whole load of time first worshipping the Lord. And so what you do is a holy thing. What you do is an amazing thing. But do you know what? In the church, so often what we do is we forget the basics. And what you're going to get in these seminars, and they're going to be great, you're going to get in the seminars and the Q&A lots of technical stuff, lots of things that make what we do with our music better. And we need that. We need that. Because if you've ever been in a worship time where the technical stuff is awful, guess what? You do not think of Jesus. When you're not sure if the worship leader knows the third verse or where we're going to next, or oh my goodness, the band's about to crash. They are crashing. Come on, guys, let's sing really loud. None of us are thinking of Jesus, okay? So we need the technical stuff. You know, it helps. But guys, none of us think that the technical stuff is what it's all about. None of us thinks that. None of us thinks it's about how tuneful the song is. It's about Him. It's about relationship with Him. And so often in the church, we move away from that and we have to move back. I'll just come into land with one little story. Again, some of you might have heard before. But it was from the early days of this church here. When we started the church, this is our 25th year. And 25 years ago, when I was 10, shut up. 11 of us came to Watford to plant the church. And it was largely me, and the other 10 were mostly folk that had been in my youth group and got to 18. And we planted the church, and slowly it grew, and it was slow, but it was wonderful. And then we ended up buying the building next door, which was a miracle. And then later on this one as well. But in the early days, one of the people that planted the church with me was a guy called Matt Redman. And Matt had been in my youth group from when he was 13. And we had some good musicians in our church in the early days, unlike now. And you know what? In the first few years, first 2-3 years, we just loved to worship. It was wonderful, and there were just times of great intimacy, times of like you just didn't want it to end. And it was creative, it was everything. And then after about, I don't know, it was about 4 or 5 years, I think it was something like that, I noticed something went wrong with our worship. We were doing the same stuff, and it wasn't that Matt was leading worse. It was somehow we'd lost the plot. Somehow we were going through the motions, but it was like empty. And I don't know how else to describe it. It was like the electricity went out of it. That sense of, wow, oh, you're here and I'm here. And that wow thing, it was like, and I couldn't work out what was wrong. And those of us that are pastors, we're control freaks and we want to fix things immediately. So I looked around and I was thinking, right, what's wrong? I've got to fix it. And so I thought, I know what it is. The PA is too loud. So I went up to the sound guy and I said, turn it down. And he said, no. Ever met a sound guy? Do you know there's the joke, what's the difference between a church sound guy and a terrorist? You can negotiate with a terrorist. And he said no, so I shot him. And we got a new sound guy. And we put the sound levels down. But that wasn't it. That didn't do it. And I thought, what is it? What is it? And I thought, I know what it is. We're singing the songs too slowly. It's like a dirge. It's like we're dying of intimacy. This is going so slow. So I went up to Matt and I said, speed it up. And he said, it is not me, it is the drummer. So I got hold of the drummer and I said, come here, sit in front of me, watch my lips. Speed up. Sorry, speed up. And you know drummers, you know, the lift doesn't go all the way to the top. And it was like, and I said, you don't understand what I'm saying, do you? Oh, it's okay. And so I said, right, okay, next Sunday morning, when you're drumming, I'll be in the front row, watch my foot, follow my foot. So Sunday morning, I was in the front row and I was going like this. And we speeded up. The only thing that changed is we finished 15 minutes early. And then, do you know what? It was after a while I realized, I know what it is. I started listening to what people were saying. And do you know what we'd done? We'd become consumers of worship. And we were saying things like, oh, the worship didn't do anything for me tonight. And it was like, what? It was not for you. You know? Oh, I don't like that song. Oh, I can't worship to that song. You can't worship to that song? You know, the first Christians, they worshipped as the lions were eating them. And you can't worship because, I can't worship that song. It's like, put you in front of a lion, mate, let's see. You know, and it was like, oh gosh, that bass player, we should have the other bass player. And it was like, where have we got to? And I suddenly realized we turned worship into a consumer activity. And so I started teaching on it. And I started teaching on bringing a sacrifice of praise. And when we come, what are we putting on the altar? You know, and you know, the sacrificial system in one level, it was finished with Jesus. He was the one perfect sacrifice. He died once for all. We don't need to make any sacrifices in order to earn our salvation at all, because Jesus' perfect death on the cross, it covers everything. In another level, we are encouraged to offer, not for our salvation, but as praise for our salvation, a sacrifice of praise. We're told to bring a sacrifice of praise. We're told in Romans 12 verse 1 to put ourselves on the altar, to offer our bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. And we'd stopped doing that. Everyone was coming, waiting for Redmond and the band to do it for them. And if they didn't do it well enough, well, it was a bad day. And as I kept teaching on it, but nothing changed. And in the end, I got desperate. I got really desperate. And I can't believe I did this. I've mellowed a bit since then. But I just got so desperate that I sacked Redmond. I banned the band. I sacked him with his agreement. But we banned the band. And I said to the church, I said, okay, we're not going to have anyone leading us. We're going to come to church and we're going to sit around, and if no one brings a sacrifice of praise or thanksgiving or adoration or anything, we'll sit in silence. And do you know what? The first 2 times we virtually did. It was agony. We sat there and no one brought anything. It was agony. And I remember after the second time, one of the young people in my church who, said to me, Mike, we can't do this again. If we do this one more time, everyone's going to leave and go to other churches and we won't have a church left. And do you know, my honest response was, honestly, I'd rather we didn't have a church than have a church that's forgotten how to worship Jesus. I'd rather we close down. I can't bear it. But do you know what? After 3 weeks, people started. But we just got it. Someone just said, I thank you, Lord, for. I thank you, Lord, for. I thank you for this. I praise you for who you are. Someone came read out a little scripture, a little psalm of worship. And And it suddenly began to be electric again. And then after another couple of Sundays, somebody started a song, Acapulco. You know, just started it, just like that. And then everyone joined in. And then the next Sunday, someone over here started a song. And just as they finished, that person started a song. And then that person started a song. And it was like the beginning. It was like, oh, the electricity was back. And what it was Jesus was at the center. And it was, wow, this is what I became a Christian for. I became a Christian for you, Jesus. I became a Christian because I want to be with you. I became a Christian because I want to be in your presence, because your presence gives me life. Not to just sing nice songs and then stop if they're not so nice. And then I said to Matt, once we got it again, I said, okay, next Sunday, why don't you just get up? Not the whole band. Let's do it slowly. Just you, acoustic guitar. And why don't you lead us in worship again? And he did. And he said to me just before, can I teach a song? Can I sing a song that I've written in this time, in this painful time? And it was a painful time. And I said, yes. And he got up there and he started singing this song, and it killed us. And the song goes like this. When the music fades and all is stripped away, and I simply come longing just to bring something that's of worth that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it, when it's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. You know, Matt wrote that song. It's not his, it's our song. He gets the royalties. But it's our song. Comes from our story. And the funny thing about it is, I said to him afterwards, I said, mate, that's a great song for us. But you can only ever do it with us because it comes out of what's happened to us. No one else will understand it. It won't work anywhere else. You couldn't have been more wrong. Could not have been more wrong. Could not have been more wrong. But that's what it is. And so we need to constantly come back to the heart of worship. It really is to him, for him, about him, with him, in him, through him. We miss that and we're just going through motions. And so this day is about learning stuff, and it's important to learn stuff. It's important to get all this technical stuff right, but let's never forget, we've all been in places where the worship's been technically perfect and dead. And then some of us have been in places where it's been a little bit all over the place, but the heart's been there. The ultimate is to have both. The ultimate, the best, is to have both. And that's what we want to do. And that's where we want to go.